gentlemen, hello, and how the fuck are you doing? This is Corey LeBlanc, the ceremonial witch, and I'm in a good mood, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. Anyways, hey, I tried to put a video out about manifesting, using a plant and shit like that, but I haven't been able to fucking put it on yet. And I'm recording this the very next night after I tried to put it on YouTube, Instagram, and anywhere else like Tumblr and all them other fucking shits. But so it might already be up. I don't know. And well, so I won't go into that right now. And if I still am unsuccessful by the time I put this on, then I will put it up. So if you're hearing this, well, you can always go check out YouTube and see if I fucking put it on. Just a little technique using an actual physical plant, not this meditation garden in your head plant thing, although that is the premise of it. But anyways, that's besides the point. What's going on? I was waiting for my son to finish his baseball practice up here in Cornwall, Ontario, Canada, with my wife, and I didn't want to play any more songs and music for some reason. I wanted to listen to something. She was talking to her mom because her mom's getting married. How fucked up is that? But anyways, so I put on Grant Morrison. It was actually in one of the, I might have been in my liked files. Maybe it was on the upcoming next playlist. I don't know, probably my liked files. But I planned to play the Grant Morrison thing that I played a long time ago as an episode, part of an episode. And so I'm going to talk about some shit off of there. I'm going to go in a little bit more depth into some shit about that I played and was listening to and I already went into descriptions of for y'all. A couple things stood out when I was listening to it just now that I kind of want to point out. That was pretty cool. And at the moment, I'm kind of drawing a blank because there's a cop and I was just speeding, so I better slow the fuck down. But it was kind of cool. I had my son in the back seat of the car and my wife in the passenger seat, and oh fuck, that's why the cops are here. There's an ambulance in front of Shoppers. No shit. Overdose at the local fucking pharmacia, farm Shoppers drug mart. And I'm not one to talk. I mean, Suboxone, I'm on fucking medication too. But my medication actually prevents overdosing, so it is what it is. Anyway, so listen to Grant Morrison talking about fighting the counterculture and his abduction by aliens and using sigil magic and how people back in the day did sigils on the wall. Let's say the first cavemen, if you believe in the Darwin stories, talking about having food maybe, and the way he explains it is you draw a bison on the wall with spears in it, and then you go outside and score a bison with spears in it, just turned up. I think it'd be more like they're trying to draw a plan of attack, maybe. Who knows? But then a little later on in the thing, I went into this, I think, a little bit, and I think I've touched on this other times, and this comes back to the thing, everything about us being a god, being godlike, I am a living god, EA KOETING, eternal fucking ascent. Eternally Ascension KOETING, I think, is what the EA stands for, but I'm not really positive at the moment. But listening to a lot of him again, not a lot, but the videos I've listened to before, doing the same thing I did with Grant Morrison, basically. And I find when I rewatch things with a new mindset, it's like watching a new video. But it's not. I'm watching the same old video, but when I pay attention, I can pick apart different parts and come up with new knowledge. So, the part I'm talking about with Grant Morrison is, he talks about, I forget the dude's name, but he thought he was talking, I think he says Constantine or Constantinople, but it might be Constantine, it might be the Emperor Constantine, but I have no idea who he's talking about because I can't remember the name. I'll get the name after and I will tell you exactly who the person is. But he said he was getting his orders directly from God. And then someone else, which I'll get the name for you once again, I'll probably just play the part for you to hear it actually, but someone else, when speaking of this and, breaking it down, breaking it apart, what this person was talking about, hearing the voice of God in their head, whoever they were speaking to, whoever he's speaking about, said they weren't necessarily hearing God's voice, but the voice from the left hemisphere of the brain. So that's our subconscious mind, right? Our right side control, the left side is actually, the left side controls the right side of the body, the right side controls the left side of the body. So our left side of our brain would be the good one as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, no, the left side would be the one. I don't know. Right now at this point, I'm kind of having a brain fucking fart and melt, because normally I would say the left side would be in control of, would be our subconscious mind, and the right side would be our conscious mind, because right is male and left is female. But I know they control reverse parts of the body. Anyways, I don't know what's going on right now with my thought process, but the point I'm trying to get at is I take this as the subconscious mind speaking to the conscious part of the mind. Anyway, so I'll come back on later and I'll correct everything that I left open-ended already, my open loops, whatever you want to call it. Open conversational points, open, whatever. Anyways, point is, everything I'm not saying correctly and giving you the accurate information, I will come on and I will correct after if I think of it, if I can. But for the most part, if you're not sure, that's why I'm just going to say, leave it at that. So, pretty sure the left side is your subconscious, unconscious part of your mind, and your right side is your conscious part of your mind. So anyways, so with that interpretation, what I'm saying is, I went into this before, and this is kind of where the left side of your mind is where the deities are, the egregores get created, where God is, the divine is, all the archangels, everything, okay? Everything is in that left part of your mind. That is your connection to the divine. And whether you think that, like me, that the divine is all egregores basically created, however, when it comes to the planetary spheres, and once again, just because we have planets up there that represent like our chakras in our body, as above so below, and all the deities, doesn't mean, like, I mean, we can literally, because we know about outer space and because science keeps, we create something like science, and it allows us to explore. But because we create as we think, as we do, then as we explore, we're like, fuck, I wonder if this is out there. We always have some kind of concept of what might be where we're exploring. And because we think about what's happening, what may be there, what might be happening as we do these experiments or whatever the case is, well, those things end up happening, right? The more people we introduce, the more difference there can be. This was proven by famous studies that I can't remember the name of. Sorry, I'm fucking useless tonight. But you know what I'm getting at. A famous experiment where they shoot a particle through the hole, everything is fine. Make two holes, same one particle, it splits in half, goes through both holes, comes back into one particle. Like, what the fuck just happened? The more people they introduced, the more it got fucking weirder. The point is, every time we explore space or think we're exploring space, or you get enough people to believe you explored space, and you tell people there's these other planets out there, well, then the more planets to become. We weren't, way back in the day when they wrote astrology books, like the first astrologers that talked about Saturn, that talked about Jupiter, that talked about the moon, okay? And today we're like, fuck, how did the ancients know about this shit? But did they know? Or were they representing something, and because enough people believe in it, that those things actually manifested in our sky that we can now, with their technology, actually see? But were they there before? Or were they all just stars and they just assumed, or through the left hemisphere with the rainbow bridge to the right hemisphere? I'll explain that in a second. But is that maybe the concept that happened? Is that maybe what happened? Did they not? Because like a lot of people like to say, okay, well, how the ancients didn't know this shit way back in the day, and yet they didn't have our technology, which some people say no, they did. They had planes and shit written on walls, obviously for a reason. And if planes are on the walls, well, then they obviously were able to go to space and shit like that. Blah 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 blah. You know the rest. And I'm here to say, okay, that's definitely a possibility, and I'm not going to dispute it because I can't fucking tell you what's true or not. So maybe I'll call this episode speculation episode, because I'll just throw a bunch of random ideas out there for you. But let's say something else is also true, okay? Because people like to say, okay, there's planes on walls, so they saw aliens come down, and those aliens told them about the planets. Maybe they came from those planets. Okay, cool. It's possible. Absolutely. And then, well, what about the concept of that wall art and those planes and stuff up there? Maybe it's something that they created by making sigils on the walls. That's a pretty out there claim, but who the fuck knows, right? But what about the idea that, like I said, the ancients put these things in books and they became manifest. And maybe there's someone playing a trick on us with these ancient books, because, you know, somebody comes out and says they're not part of a government or part of an elite, and this book is, you know, something that even they didn't want released, but it just got released. Like, you know, I loved Emerald Tablets of Thoth, but right now, I don't even know if they've been released or not, but when I listen to those things, the last 2 tablets haven't been released to the public, and then eventually they're going to be released. Does that mean because they're not done yet, and they're trying to fucking put something massive in there, and then it's going to get leaked, and then we're all supposed to believe that it's a leak, but really someone's playing us for fools, and this is going to be some egregorical, let's manifest something new with everybody's fucking brain power? I don't know. You tell me. But I think that's definitely a concept and a thought worth thinking. How do you stop everybody in the world from manifesting their desires? Well, you fucking make them believe and use their mind power for your manifestations. You keep throwing them different fucking theories over and over and over again. You keep pretending that here's a new theory, here's a new theory, here's a new theory, here's a new theory, so they never come up with their own fucking theory, that they go so far down the fucking rabbit hole that they can't climb out. And every time they do, they fall into another rabbit hole, and they climb out of that one, they fall into another rabbit hole, and they climb out of that one, they fall into another fucking rabbit hole. So anyways, knowing what I know, knowing that we create, and once again, knowing that we create stuff is just basically going on what other people have told me. So even that concept could be ludicrous. But the fact that I've done it tells me that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that someone told me that we create as we go, that we can all create our reality, okay? That could have been a made-up concept. But the fact is, I believe that I can create my reality. So, and that's something else I learned, is that if you have a belief system, whatever that is, whether it's from somebody else, or if you manage to get rid of your old belief systems and put in a new belief system, then within that system that you create, whatever it is a reason why religion, or more like witchcrafts and things like that, we say, well, I say anyways, this, whatever system you're from, whatever stem, whatever faction, well, these are part of your belief system. So when you take on a belief system, that is the system, the program that you are going to run. And if your program is in line with you being able to create your life, well, then you can create it. And this is something that I've proven to myself. So I don't need any more reassurance. Because obviously, at some point, the information that whoever don't want us to have information for whatever reason, and I'm still not against the idea that they hold this information from us because we have to come to it. And if they just allowed us to have it, well, then everything would be way too fucking easy. And there's someone obviously helping that. And if that's quote unquote evil or dark force, well, that's why you reach enlightenment through the dark. But getting way off topic. But the point of all this, what I was just trying to say, is not the point of this episode, but through repetition and my own experiments, my spiritual science experience, alchemy experiments, by putting in sigils, putting in belief systems, putting in programming, and then it becoming a reality from the little occurrences, the little fucking synchronicities that happen to me every single fucking day that make me smile and remind me that magic is fucking real, to the big ones that I manifest, and when they finally come in, it's like, oh my God, you still wow me every time, when fucking the money I asked for, or me and my wife coming to a new level, or my kid getting something, or me having a new opportunity, whatever the case is. Every time I get something from a planetary energy or a deity or myself or my ancestors, it fucking blows my fucking mind, and I fucking love it. And that's how I know that it can't be all bullshit. But there's someone out there adding bullshit to the real shit, and you have to discern. And the best way to discern is to take what you fucking believe, and instead of re-preaching it, retelling people it, put it in the crucible, put it on the fucking, in the fucking microscope, under the microscope, put it in front of the telescope, put it in the crucible, I think I already said that, put it in whatever the fuck you do your test, the test tube, the microwave, doesn't matter, put in whatever the fuck you need to put it in, and test it. And if it works, great. And, you know, waiting for it to work could be a bitch. So try a bunch of things at the same time and make it happen for you. Make up your own fucking system. Make up your own fucking manifesting tricks. And after a while, you'll have so many that you can write a fucking book. And you might even manifest some money. But trying to manifest money without providing a service ain't going to work. Or not well. You're gonna have to work with what you got. So either you're gonna get a raise and you're gonna get your 10 grand over the next 5 years because you didn't specify I wanted the 10 grand right now all at once. You might get lucky like me and it come all at once when I didn't specify, but I think that's because the way I worded it for this. So my mind said, okay, well, he needs all that at once and it can't be over time. But if you just say I want 10 grand, well, you're going to get the 10 grand, but it could take 10 years, it could take 5 years, it could take whatever, you know what I mean? And then that might mean your next year, you're going to get fired and you're only going to make $10,000, and that could be a bitch too. But once again, way off topic. But, so, before I got on to the topic of how the planets could have been created by someone putting it in a book, and then those planets created, because what I was trying to get at is, even though the planets are in the sky and I'm looking at this, well, it's not quite a fingernail moon, but it's a beautiful, almost like the DreamWorks moon right now on the 29th of January. I'm looking at it, and it's beautiful. And it's in the fucking mostly west, but northwest part of the sky. And going by the fucking zodiacal map in my head, now if this is really... if I'm going from east to west as a straight line for me right now from my house, which probably isn't the true east and west, but that means it would be the sign past Scorpio. So what's that, Libra? After Scorpio? Or is it, anyways, whatever sign, that's where the moon would be right now, and I could be absolutely wrong, but I'm just saying it's close to that part of the quadrant. But anyways, that's a fucking point. That's off the topic, and where I am on the map is not dead center. I'm like right on the border of the states, so I don't think that's exactly halfway. And so technically I'm pretty north, so it might actually be closer to like fucking Capricorn or whatever the case is. Anyways, I think it actually might be Capricorn, where the moon is, or supposed to be, or changing signs. But anyways, before I was getting into the idea that, you know, how we say the ancients knew astrology way back when, and it's like, well, it's in a book. And if something is in a book, what I know about writing, when you write things down, you can bring it in. That's sigil magic, baby. Sigil magic isn't just turning things into symbols. Now, part of everybody teaching sigil magic changes the fact that you can literally just write what you want to happen and turn it into a reality. So, yeah, sigil magic teaches that, you know, if you want to bring something into manifestation, your best bet is to take a statement of intent, take all the vowels and double letters out, and make a symbol out of that. And then when you put that in your subconscious mind, it will be created. Now, in a previous episode, I talked about how my buddy Justin never tried sigil magic, but him and his wife just started writing shit down that they wanted to happen. And by doing so, shit started happening for them. Just writing it down. And I know from the past, writing down things like Earl Nightingale, write them down, keep it in your pocket, sleeping on books, all these different concepts. I put together the ideas that just writing in general, whether you're writing it or something that's been written and you want to know it, you know, if you want to know the information that's in a book, you lay on that book. If you write something down and you lay on that, likewise, that's going to get put in your head as well. When it gets put in your head, the thing that you're writing is affirmations and what your future wants to be, laying out that information in your head. So the way that laying down in a book idea happens is basically, the book is, you buy a book, it teaches you information. Within that book is information on how, if it's a magical book, it's how to manifest things, it's how to use, you know, powers, whatever, the like. But something written by you is going to be about your future, about something that happens. So, by laying on the book, you're just putting whatever you're laying on into your mind. And if what you're putting in your mind is information, well, then you'll have it later. But if what you're putting in your mind is something you want to manifest in a couple weeks, a couple days, a couple years, then either way, it's still going into your mind, your subconscious mind. So, there's a lot of information about sigil magic out there, and I'm not saying sigil magic is bullshit. I'm just throwing out the ideas that everything that's been put in the books is an egregorical thought form servitor type thing right now. And this is just, once again, just theories, concepts, speculation. But the way residual magic is, saying things is, a lot of people are saying it's the best way to manifest, or it's the only way to manifest, just writing stuff down. And I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to be like that to protect you from writing down, a bad story that you get hurt. And maybe it comes down to a person's power. Maybe once you start becoming once you become initiated, then you can start writing things into existence. And prior to that, things you write down happen because you have a different energetic signature. Your chart is saying something different than other people. You have prominent powers, so to speak, and early powers. Because everybody has the same abilities, but some people are going to be better in some areas. And some of those things might be in line with manifesting. So, if I never wrote anything down to bring something into my life before I do my initiation, well, I can look back right now and be like, well, how come this never happened before? I must have wrote things down before that I wanted to happen, and this and that and the other thing, and maybe I had, but maybe I watched too much TV, and then whoever doing the manifesting through the TV and the commercials and the TV shows and music was enough to block that from happening. Then when I finally stopped watching that shit, then I was able to actually manifest what I wrote down without any error or confusion or anything stopping me, basically. So, the last thought I was getting at before all this was that. I was going to put the notion, but it's a new day today because yesterday was the 28th, today's now the 29th. So sorry, I think it's 29th and the 30th. I don't know, one of the two. I don't even know the date. Point is, I was going to get to the idea of, like I said, the planets in the skies could be something that someone put in a book, and then enough people believe that those planets were in the skies, and in that order, and then it happened. And I'm not trying to state the fact that that was already there before, but we just couldn't see it, and then we manifested just seeing it, but it was technically there, we just brought it out. I'm literally saying that maybe there never was Saturn there before in the sky with rings on it, until we started believing in it. And by we, I mean the ancients started reading the book, and then now the New Age and the witches and all that shit. It doesn't mean there's not any power in these things, because there is. Everything written down about Saturn being the ruler of this realm, everything written down about Saturn being the equivalent to Satan, everything written down about Mars being a violent, aggressive, a passionate being, everything written down about the traits of Venus, the moon, and all these things. Everything written down about these things. Okay? Give these planetary energies power. Now, unlike the deities that we may or may not believe, or may not have existed before, these actually have significant, large things in the sky. So it makes them more powerful because, like the idea of Phil Hine with the Star Trek gods, using all the Star Trek people to manifest, being an entire, I can't think of the word, but an entire basically god list that you can call on for different meetings. The planets are like that because everybody who studies, believes astrology, and science, anybody who has to do anything with a planet, who studies planets, who was a kid, who learning about the planets, reading books that have planet information in them, all those planet books out there that have the information about the planet, all the astrology books out there, create this big, I'm trying to find that word again, can't find it, big, encyclopedia and religious text, so to speak, even though it may not be religious, but it creates this, I can't think of that fucking name, I think it would be perfect right now, but. So, all that about the planets, like I said, I use planetary magic more than anything, and the foundation of that was, well, I know the moon's up in the sky. I live on the earth. I believe in the elements. I believe in the planets rule the elements, right? So that was my reasoning for using the planets more than anything else, because to me, the Elohim, the seven, Rainbow Bridge, whatever people call it these days, but the 7 planets, and then, even the other 3 I use, but they have these huge, massive 3D cylindrical or spherical, bodies up in space, basically above us. Like the sun comes up every day and heats us up. Now, to say that sun is something somebody put in the book and created, that'd be kind of crazy, but in the same sense, possible. Everybody would say, well, no, we couldn't exist without the sun. Well, how do you know that? We've never done it. Absolutely, yeah, it would be fucking cold as shit without that sun. But I live in Canada, and there are days where the sun doesn't do anything for me anyways. I don't feel it. Like yesterday, I felt it on my skin. And obviously, what I was taught was, the sun is just not powerful. And, anybody who got into this path and watched Zeitgeist or anything like that knows the sun dies for 3 days. It comes back to life, which is metaphorical for it not moving on the axis, basically. But in those 3 days, if you were to go outside whenever it's sunny, you would not be able to feel any sun on your face either. You would not be able to feel any warmth. Now, yesterday, I felt a whole lot of warmth, and it was a beautiful thing, and it almost brought me to tears, believe it or not, at work. I felt it really strongly on my third eye for whatever reason. Maybe it's because we're in... this is the moon's in the Aries right now, which I was way off yesterday with the whole Capricorn and Libra thing. But anyways, Libra's before fucking Scorpio, I think. No, it's after. Anyways, doesn't matter. Point is, I was way off by using my town. But some people might say, well, that's actually off, and the real one you should go by is blah, 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 blah. But anyways, no matter. So... the idea that someone created the planets by putting them in a book and then they became manifest is crazy, apparently. Well, I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to let that go for now and talk about what I'm supposed to talk about. So, the idea that these people, Alexander was the one person that he mentions, by he, I mean, holy fuck, I can't think of names today. The guy I was talking about yesterday, fucking terrible. The guy who created the Invisibles, and likewise has lots of money, and has gone on stage and told people he's used sigil magic to kind of make his money. Obviously, we know he's talented. He was able to create comets and shit like that, but at the same sense, he's also one on record saying he can do this shit. So he's done sigils, and he thinks the world's changed, been abducted by aliens. Grant Morrison, there it is. Sorry, I'm saying all those attributes to remind myself, to subtly tell me who it was without keep saying like, wow, what the fuck is it? What the fuck is it? But anyways, Alexander, Homer, were the 2 names he mentions of people who were getting their knowledge or their instructions directly from God. Now, Julian, I can't think of the last name, and I'm going to try to figure it out. Julian something was the person who wrote the specific book where he says the Corpus Colosum wasn't fully, or even depending on how far back you go to what century, but the Corpus Colosum is what connects your left to your right hemisphere of your brains, okay? Your left side, your right side. That wasn't either completely done, completely manifest, completely present, or not at all, depending in these beings. And, some of them that talk about hearing the voice of God or talking to demons or talking to, angels, whatever the case is, all left side of the brain, all the subconscious, or the conscious, depending on whose opinion you're going with. Because Graham Morrison is actually punting the opposite notion that these people didn't have the conscious faculties, they only had the subconscious faculties. And if I play the thing from EA KOETING that I want to play, where he talks about the Bible, because I've told you about the Bible having stories in it about making rape okay and killing women and children okay and different things like that. And now, once again, you have to go back to an older Bible, because I don't think that's been translated in the new Bible. Now, it might, I don't know. But when I looked up, I think it was the 1611 King James Bibles I was using, which still had some of, not the original translation, but, well, the original translation to English before it was retranslated to change the meaning of certain things. But anyways, so I might play that after, just to give you a concept of, if people only had the right side at one point, and then the left side had to be created, and then, well, that would make sense that they weren't in touch with their left side of their mind, to not be in touch with God, and that's why they created all these deities and church and this and that. And then, once in a while, someone would have a religious experience and decide to say that they're God or the Son of God, but there was no, because they weren't educated enough, there was no understanding of, well, when you connect your left side to your right side, you're going to have this overwhelming feeling that you're the spiritual being here having a 3D physical experience. You're going to think that you must be an angel or God or Jesus Christ. But when everybody is going to have this at one point in your life, you're either going to try to ignore it and suppress it, or take pills to suppress it or numb it, or they're going to, if they're from the Bible Belt or somewhere like that, as Alan Watts likes to put it, then they're going to think they're fucking Jesus. And there's plenty of people still to this day saying that they're Jesus. So I think Birch even talked about this. But anyways, Morrison comes from the opposite way, which, could also be true, because Adam and Eve, I think that story is one of its interpretations is how we went from just subconscious mind to conscious, both conscious and subconscious. To have the knowledge of good and evil is to get your conscious faculties, which is where your identity would be, according to Grant Morrison. When he tells everybody to lose the identity, it's because he wants people to stop being ego, fight or flight, all these bad things. You hear the New Age movement tell you that you shouldn't use or shouldn't do. And once again, they all have their place. Balance is key, and using them properly is key. But the notion he punts is that we were all subconscious mind, and all of a sudden we dipped over. Now, eventually, we kept evolving to the point where everybody had the conscious mind, but for a while there would be your regular people, and then your kings were probably bred with better looking, more intelligent people, because sometimes those people would end up sleeping with a pretty fucking prostitute or another pretty guy somewhere. So you would get a good looking person in there, good looking person in there. Sometimes you get a smart person in there. Sometimes, these are things written down in history, so who the fuck knows, but sometimes there's literally accounts marked down to making women sleep with extraordinarily smart men, just to make smart kings and children and babies. But anyways, so this goes in line with what Jordan Peterson talks about. He talks about the fact that women choose men, and except for maybe the bloodlines, keeping the bloodlines with kings and queens, but especially nowadays, women go for men that have stronger genes if they're guided by their hormones, ovulation system and shit like that. Then they're going for guys with more testosterone when they're ovulating, and not so much testosterone when they're not ovulating. Therefore, when they have kids, their kids are all going to be from guys that have more testosterone, which you can call maybe like Neanderthals or fucking steroid users, but nonetheless, they have the more powerful genes. Doesn't necessarily always mean smarter, but according to Peterson, women have a way to pinpoint the man who's going to do them the best good. And what Grant's saying is that every time someone had a conversation And he mentions people that done some pretty bad things. I'm pretty sure is who he's mentioning. I don't really know, to be honest, but if you take the Bible, where it says those bad things about how if you go to a new place, take it in my name, and when I allow you to have the city, kill all the men and children and all the women that have been intimate with men, but the women who haven't been intimate with men, take them onto yourself, basically telling you you can have any woman you want as long as she's a virgin. And this could be the conscious mind instead of God. Maybe the Bible was written from some man's conscious mind, and we're using that today to base our religion on. Now, that could be the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, let's say. Because the New Testament was really put together, apparently the entire Bible. The books from the Old Testament have lasted a really long time, apparently, so believe that if you want. But the Old Testament books, the Jewish people hadn't even decided on what to use for their Jewish religion at the point of 300 and something was the year where the Catholic Church decided what their book was going to be. So the way I interpret it was the Catholic Church was already a thing, but they hadn't had a Holy Bible yet. And they all agreed on the body of work that we now call the Holy Bible, which has obviously been changed from what it originally was when they first took it on, and they had to choose between all these different books. And the ones they used, they had to hide, suppress, burn. So, and when it comes to Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff, if you believe such things, then obviously someone had the forefront to the knowledge to not throw that bitch out and go hide it in a fucking cave somewhere. Or they did burn them all, and whoever else wrote it ended up saving it. But anyways, the point I was trying to get at here was just that Grant Morrison, I keep saying Grant Morrison punts the notion, that's using his words, that some of these people that acted when they said God was telling them what to do might just be the right hemisphere of the brain. And what I was trying to say was that could be the difference between, the right side of the brain. The conscious mind is the sun. It's got some attributes to Mars. They're both plus. Air and fire are both positive, both male, gender, male polarity. That's two different things, male gender, male polarity. But they're both male. Mars would be the gender, air would be the polarity, or the sun and Saturn and Mercury. Whereas Venus would be the female gender, and water would be the female polarity. I hope that's making sense. So when it comes to the male mind, the conscious mind, well, Saturn puts limitation on us consciously and subconsciously, of course. And Mercury would be more the subconscious aspect of our conscious mind. No, that's kind of confusing. I'm not even going to dive into that. But all I'm trying to say is those guys there, Mars, Mercury, which is the Kabbalion, Hermes, Thoth, Saturn being Satan, or Mars being the old Bible God, and then the Sun being the new Bible God, the New Testament. All right, so right there, and Mars can also be attributed to Satan. So, but within that Bible, okay, you had the two parts of the Bible written with the conscious mind. Now, the New Testament is in some places not any better than the Old Testament, but it is an improvement because at that time, in 300 after death, they may have had some connection to their left side of their mind, and they might have gotten a little more compassionate because by that point, it's probably likely and can probably say that they've had enough war by this time, to realize that, for the most part, it may not be the best thing to keep going on killing people. Now, it got a lot worse as well after that, if history is correct. But anyways, I gotta go do something. I'll be right back after all this and try to make more sense out of this shit. All right. But anyways, as much as we can associate Mars and Saturn to Satan or Lucifer, or sorry, the devil. The devil would be Mars because of the red, and we can Saturn as Satan. But I think that's just a way to try to demonize astrology more than anything. Now, Saturn can represent limitations and, limit you, and, Father Time, Grim Reaper, all that kind of shit, those repercussions. So, it makes sense, but you can make sense out of a lot of things, and it doesn't mean it's an accurate representation. So, the way I was going with that, with the Bible, I'm probably just going to end it there, because it's not where I was going down those same lines I've already talked about, and it's not really what I mean. But the only reason I was saying it was in the context of our conscious mind. I was just trying to make the representation between the conscious mind, planetary elements that are, positive consciousness, basically the male version of positive, the polarity version positive, and the right side, the male side, whether you're talking about polarity or gender, plus with polarity is male, or sorry, plus with polarity is your ego, that kind of mind. But that doesn't mean you can't use your subconscious mind and use it to not necessarily talk to Saturn, but find out what you need to do to appease Saturn and shit like that, using your chart through divination to figure all that out. I mean, you're going to get this information consciously, but kind of only if you're in touch with your subconscious mind. Because if you're not really in touch with your subconscious mind, or trying to fucking figure this shit out, or trying to be in touch with your subconscious mind, then you're not going to figure this shit out all that well, all that fast, to be completely honest. It's kind of like, if you believe in the Bible and you start having a spiritual awakening process, well then you're going to look down, you're going to look at fear-based media, and you're just going to turn and run back to God, and you're not really going to help your situation. You're going to be in this between a rock and a hard place, well, all this shit's from the devil, I can't look at it, but yet I'm feeling some kind of way that I have to fucking express this, and I don't know what to do. And, so it would be kind of like being stuck there, if you try to. But anyways, I'm going to let that go for now, because this is going to be my segue into, like I said, talking about and playing the clips from Grant Morrison and KOETING. Now, first, before I even play anything or talk about this any further, because I've already talked about demonic stuff, demonic presences, and I'm going to get into more about why I only do the Goetia under certain circumstances, and why I say I go back and forth, and in my opinion is all over the place. And I'll give you two of the most best reasons I can come up with, and then I have many theories. I think that's the whole part of my Saturn being in the 7th house, which is like the Libra house, me always having two sides to every story, and then my moon being in Gemini, and also Venus being there. That's the double. That's the twins, right? So I'm very much two people, can take both sides and can weigh the pros and cons to each side. So I'm going to give you that in a bit, but before I do that, I want to just give a disclaimer, because I don't know. I've spoken to a few people, and out of the people I've spoken to, there might be one or two that may not like the fact that I'm talking about KOETING, or they might potentially think I'm sticking up for demons, demonology, using demons and all that, and I want to state that I'm not. All the things I'm going to say the following, whether it's because I'm playing KOETING or talking about demons and trying to rationalize the use of them, or saying that they may not be as bad as you think. I don't want anybody to think that I'm promoting demons, that I think people should use demons, that I think people should take on my opinion. I wholeheartedly believe that everybody should come to their own rational opinions of things. You want to think the 72 demons that Solomon put in the brass vessel are demons that with everybody, because the archangels are kind of within us. We have to develop a relationship with them. Now, you can have these archangels within you the entire time. If you never develop a relationship with them, and you go to fuck the demons, well, you don't have any protection. Does that mean your life's gonna get fucked up? Well, I don't think so, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. So, but in the same sense, those 72 demons that he enslaved down there, you could also look as by them writing that in the Bible. Well, not necessarily the Bible. Solomon was in the Bible, but that story wasn't necessarily in the Bible. But by them writing that, talking about it, and having King Solomon's different grimoires and shit that you can buy and work through the Goetia, you can look at it from what I've kind of already talked about, and that is that when you put down entities, demons, you give them a place where they live, you give them something they feed off of, which could be your fear or whatever the case is, and you do all this, well then you are basically creating an entity, a servitor, an egregore. So there's many views, so I'm going to get into my views, but before I get into all that, all I want to state here is that I don't have the answers, and I'm not telling you to do anything, but I do want to throw a concept out. I said earlier, it's going to be a speculation episode where you're going to hear some of my opinions, and I'm going to take my speculations further than I've ever thought about them before, and I do that through episodes a lot of the time. So that's what I'm going to get into here a little bit. I'm going to mix it together with the Grant Morrison idea that they either had only their conscious faculties way back when, or they only had their subconscious faculties way back when, and we're going to try to figure out which one would make more sense. From there, I'm going to get into the spirituality aspect of when someone has a spiritual awakening and they don't have the right books or right information, if there is such a thing as right information, what can be done and what happens and why people go different routes. And, I want to talk about rainbow bridge that people like to use. The planets all have colors associated with them. The rainbow has certain colors. And you can look at that as the rainbow is your chakras going up right in the middle of you, which would be right between your two minds. And that when you connect, your rainbow bridge would be connecting all your chakras from the ground up. Or if you're doing the tree of life, you're going from the top to the bottom. But when you connect that, you can essentially connect your mind. But I want to talk about, can you connect both have your minds without having your chakras open? And I believe you can, but we're going to work that out together in this episode. And I also want to get into if the opposite's true, if you can have your rainbow bridge connected but don't have half your mind connected yet, can you have both opposites? And I would say yes, but I'd say eventually if you have one, the other one's on its way, basically. But anyways, that's what we're going to talk about today. First, I got to go do something. My little daughter's been having fevers, and I want to make sure everything's okay, so I got to go sign her up for the clinic before they close. But yeah, you're not going to notice, like I always fucking say. Alright, so maybe first I'll just talk about the rainbow bridge, since there's probably not as much to that. Once it's in speculation, and it just is what it is. We have chakras within us. Anybody who's in spirituality probably came to that conclusion, or has read it, heard it in the New Age movement, and sorry about that. I was just looking at some of my levels in the car. I want to make sure everything's okay. Anyway, so the Rainbow Bridge refers to, you watch the movie Thor and you see some, you see that I forget the name of the fucking bridge they break in the first fucking movie, and then they have to recreate it, or use dark energy to send Thor down to get Loki and the Avengers, shit like that. And I think they say 9 realms. I don't think it's the 7 realms there, because, technically there's 9 planets that we learned about in school. So, connecting the halves of your mind, okay, we can just do meditations, and I've said often, well, you can probably meditate before you get into this, but I don't think, once again, speculation, I guess maybe if you grow up in a Buddhist, I don't know what, I know what I learned in my world religion class about those different religions, but I don't necessarily know exactly everything about, I don't necessarily know everything about every religious path, and whether or not anybody who has a religion, I won't even name them, because, anybody who has a specific religion that we get traditions from today, such as practices, rituals like meditation from, if they, while they start engaging in meditation, if they do it properly, if they start seeing the colors of the rainbow, or have to do it on grass, getting the energy from the earth, or learning about their culture and what old beliefs might be, or because in my experience, talking about the Rainbow Bridge, okay, whatever you think that is whatever you think that is, but I tend to, it's not a term I would ever use. I just thought it was kind of cool, Rainbow Bridge, and I thought about the chakras and the planets, and then from there, using the bridge to bridge the gap between your two halves of your minds. So, opening that root chakra, fear-based media, that's the first one, right? And that opens call it the Earth Star chakra, Earth energy to come up through your root, basically, which kind of unlocks your feet's chakras. You have chakras in your feet as well. But if you do the microcosmic orbit, you kind of know that. But anyways, so that's kind of the first step. And then from there, depending on your age, but it doesn't really matter. I just don't want to promote, kids having sex, and people can have sex and have babies. Anyways, kids shouldn't be listening to my shit anyways, because the new YouTube rules. But anyways, point is, the next one is the sacral, and it's not really about physical sex, although that is a component to it, and it's part of it, absolutely, positively. The more you try to hinder and postpone sexual pleasure, sexual fulfillment, happiness, the more that can become blocked. Now, that's not the only thing that has to do with your sacral chakra, because, in my experience, Mars has a part to do in that, and you can kind of be like, well, Mars, wouldn't that be a different chakra? And, well, the root is red, and the next one up is not quite red anymore, but it is a... Oh, sorry, I wanted to make sure it was still recording. It tends to stop sometimes when I stop the car. Mars is tied to, especially for males, but I think everybody in general, it's tied to their passion. It's tied to, the ruler of Scorpio. Scorpio is the genitalia, sex, death, and transformation. There's a reason why that's Scorpio, why it's 3 different signs. So Mars does have ties there, and Mars rules fire. People get their fire, their passion, from I wouldn't necessarily say from the sacral, but it definitely is somewhere that if you don't use or suppress or, hold back, hold down, trying not to, if let's say you're an artist and then you hit puberty and then you decide you want to be chaste, and then maybe you're still getting inspiration and, you relieve yourself, but then you decide to be a priest. Well, then your artwork is going to go from maybe beautiful pictures to, you might still have the technique and be very well skilled at drawing and making the circles, the lines, whatever it is you were drawing. Maybe it's abstract, but then you might have more aggressive art, or maybe you don't have inspiration whatsoever anymore, because when you suppress that, then, unless you let it all out in your art, okay, you let all your sexual desire, passion out within your art, then you won't necessarily, won't be experiencing that. So this is why I'm saying you don't necessarily, and this is not what I want to talk about, but just a little side tangent, but you don't necessarily, just by suppressing sex and not having sex, do you block up your sacral chakra, but it does have a lot to do with creativity. Your root chakra is kind of losing your to me anyways, and this might seem kind of crazy or very extreme in between them both, but not really, because they kind of go one with the other, right? Because first step, you believed in a religion such as Christianity, or you were Islamic, or you were a a different version of Christianity, whether it's a Jehovah's Witness, or somebody who celebrates Sabbath on a Saturday, but it's not Judaism, or maybe you're, it doesn't matter. Whatever, it doesn't even have to be a religion. It could be, your parents were a political party, but then as you grow up, you meet somebody who's not that, and they kind of get in your head, and then you go against it, or whatever the case is. Anyways, whenever you start shattering your belief systems that were around when you were a child, okay, and then you start breaking those down, and those are no longer how you feel. Well, part of you feels liberated, but then another part of you feels lost, okay? And during this time, it can be very hard to be passionate about things because your focus is on, well, what the fuck do I do? Which side do I pick? What do I believe? You know, you're having trouble discerning because, like most things, when you find out one thing isn't real or fake, or you've been lied to, whether it's by somebody respectful, by a lover, by your parents, then you have trouble believing everything and anything, and you almost want to throw all the babies out with all the bathwater, so to speak. And you know, it's something you shouldn't ever do, because you know, nothing is ever just black or white, or all black or all white, or just black and white. It's, you know, it's both, it's gray, it's all the fucking rainbow colors. But anyway, so once you start losing that, well, you got to start building your own. You got to start building your own paradigms and belief systems. And, you know, you're not going to, obviously, you might not even pick the right belief system right off the hop. The first one you go down the path of, you find, you experiment with, may not be one you're meant to. Oh, shit. Sorry about that. Just dropped the phone. Oh, thank God it is. Okay. The first one you go down, you know, like I initially I was just in the truth movement, so that's not really a spirituality, but I was in the truth movement, following that, and then getting pretty scared, and, you know, I was on a tipping point where I wasn't sure whether to believe in the Catholic Church, but then I was seeing all this stuff about the Catholic Church being bad, and, you know, growing up, going to Catholic schools during Project Truth, which is the name for when the priests were getting caught doing things to the altar boys, and not just priests, it was cops, it was lawyers, but I think the priests got the worst rap for it. Which, you know, in one sense, okay, yeah, it's bad for a leader of a church to do something like that. But in the other sense, I mean, these people are trying not to have sex at all, period. Whereas the cops and lawyers, some of them had, you know, wives, and then yet they're doing something with the same sex, but in a child, you know, to me that'd be worse. But that's regardless. It's bad all around. I forgot where the fuck I was going with that. But anyway, so from there, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to Christianity or not, but I just kept diving into truth. And then from there, the New Age hit me like a ton of bricks, and I resonated with so many different things. And then there were some things that were too out there, but because I wanted something to hold on to, that I felt like I needed something to hold on to, I gripped onto it anyways, and just chose to believe certain aspects, and chose to think that other aspects were either fake or, you know, infiltrations from people, whether it be politicians, Christianity, it doesn't matter. Anyways, wow, I'm going way out of the way to explain something simple. But so I started creating my own new belief system, and then eventually got into magic, and that was my new belief system, and then started dabbling with witchcraft, and then sigils, and then manifesting, because, well, I was trying to manifest with law of attraction, but then too many things sounded too easy, or anyways, point is, after that step, after you start reclaiming belief systems and breaking down your other ones, whether you take an initiation on or not, the next step is finding something you want to be passionate about. And it could be something you were passionate about before that you want to open up, because, you know, for whatever reason, if you're working a job and then your belief systems fell and you're still working that job, well, then you still might not have your passion, your sacral chakra unblocked. You could be having sex with your wife every weekend, but if you're not experimenting or experiencing something that makes you tick, in the sense of, you know, because sometimes sex can be that. A new relationship with a new partner can be very passionate, and it could mimic that. And I think that's why it's in this classification, among a few other reasons, because, you know, if you're not doing anything, if you let yourself get blocked up sexually, you can be cranky, and if you don't express that through something you're passionate about, you know, it's one or the other kind of thing. But let's say you haven't been passionate about something, and, you know, not that you're bored of your partner, but, you know, you eventually need to branch some of that energy out into a different field. Well, this is why this is how I think, or why it makes sense to me that that's the next step. because along with your new belief systems, you either got to take on new ways to transmute that energy, because, you know, depending on the age of the woman you're with, you know, she's not always going to want to do it with you. She might not be able to do it with you. You may not be able, you may have different times, work schedules, shifts, whatever the case is, you know. So finding something you're passionate about is huge. So you have something else than just sex to transmute that energy, to relieve that, because too much of that Mars energy, especially for men, can create, you know, a lot of bad juju, some bad energy, you know, and it's not healthy. But that's why that would be the next step. So that's why Mars in the color red is kind of tied to that, and I don't even know why or how I got to the sacral. But anyway, so the whole whatever I forgot, if it's important, I'll come back to it when I listen to this after. But this is why opening the rainbow bridge helps you open up and connect the two sides of your mind. So the point I was trying to get at is, if the children in school started learning about how to meditate and connect their minds at a younger age, well, then I could see it being possible to connect your mind without necessarily having your chakras completely opened. Because if you teach somebody to do something, it's a little bit different. But this could also be the reason why it's not taught and it has to be found out. And, you know, maybe I'll get into that, explain that a little bit better a little bit later. But because you could say, and that's kind of what I was going with the whole sacral thing, it's not just about sex, because if you're a child, then you can't experience sex yet, because, you know, women develop faster than men, but there's still a point where a woman isn't really physically ready for sex yet, I think. Anyways, I don't have that anatomy, and, you know, I don't like thinking about that. But for a man, you know, there's a certain point where we're able to actually do it. Whereas before that, you know, it wouldn't get hard enough or big enough, or, you know, no one would touch us, kind of thing. So, you know, there's no point, and we don't even have that drive in us, period. So, and for women, I don't know, because I'm not a woman, but for a man, that's how it works. But you're most certainly more passionate about the things, almost too passionate when you're a child, because, you know, for me anyways, I didn't have just one thing I liked to happen, multiple things I loved, which was fun. From staying in my room, imagining I was singing on stage or being a superhero, to actually playing hockey, baseball, skateboarding, you know, just hanging out with friends, you know, to making up games with my little cousins, to so many things I like to do. I was very active, you know, it didn't matter. So, and, you know, not to say that video games are bad, because I don't think they program people's minds as much as people think they do, but I think the motivation behind that is more to create something that stimulates the part of the mind where your passion might come in, but it's not exclusive to a passion, because, you know, your passion could be within limits, depending on, you know, if Saturn's part of that limitation to you or not. But, you know, if you're creating art, if you're creating music, if you're dancing, if you're, you know, doing something, there are certain limitations within the physical realm where you can't, like, fly if you're trying to be a gymnast, which would make you a really good gymnast. But, you know, you can be as creative as you want. Whereas with a video game, unless you create the video game, then you can't really be any more creative than other people can be. You know, you can find different techniques or whatever, and this is why people on YouTube make money off of showing video games and stuff like that, because they find in some way how to do something different than other people, but then they teach them how to do that, and then everybody can do it, as long as they can move their fingers fast enough or comprehend what multiple buttons they need to push, or whatever the case is. But so that might be some of the logic behind, you know, releasing video games, if you think it's part of a scam, a system, a setup to dumb down mankind. I don't think it's meant to program kids. It might be there to desensitize children, you know, playing these games that look very, very real, and get them to talk about how they've killed people over and over again, using the English language, and desensitize them in a specific way. But I don't think it actually does justice, because most people consciously, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and fake, but consciously, when you have, you know, the idea, when you believe this is the real realm and you're not into these studies, well, then you know consciously what's real and what's fake. So just because someone could kill someone in a video game, a pretty gory, bloody one, doesn't mean they can do it in real life. But anyway, so then when you get up to the solar one, and then these are the lowest animal natured chakras, as they say. And that's why, the McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, most of these ones are, red, white, yellow, brown, orange. The first three colors of, rainbow, the fucking whatever. But they are necessary. You need to open these to go higher up. But anyways, so you can probably connect your mind. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a headache. There's a lot of different energies coming in, and things feel very heavy, and a lot of people getting sick right now, and from the new age sites to the things I feel. I don't know what's causing it, but I know it's not necessarily just the time of year or sickness, but it is what it is. So I wanted to go in deeper on this rainbow bridge idea, but I have a different subject, the demon subject. I really want to go into a lot more depth, because it's something that people might not like and may not necessarily be attracted to on one level, but their dark side might be crying out to do something like that. And for some reason, if they don't explore it when they're in a neutral state, or even a happy state, or when things are good, well, if things go real bad for the magician and going through an initiation, they might just decide to, well, today's the day I'm going to learn about doing demonic evocation, because I'm going to get back at so-and-so, the person that broke up with me, my boss who fired me, whoever. And doing something in that state of mind, especially when you have no knowledge of it whatsoever, is very appealing to the dark part of you, because that part's already engaged and ready to go. And when it hears you say that you don't want to look into this stuff because it kind of scares you, it's like, oh, okay, but one of these days I'll create a circumstance where you're not going to be scared to do it, or even if you're scared, you're going to do it anyways, because something else is going to provoke you to want to do it more than that fear. So, and it's for that reason I want to talk about the demons, and to help potentially put my view out there, in which I have many views about it. I'll at least probably explore 2 to 4 of them, and to try to maybe demystify, desensitize. No, those words aren't right, but try to make it less fearful for you and show you what it potentially could be, but then be real with you of what could happen and what has potentially happened. Anyways, but that's what I'm going to get to in a bit. But anyways, so the question, like I said, was, can you put your two halves of your mind together without opening up your chakras? And I absolutely think that's true. Can you have your chakras open without having your minds connected? That might be a little trickier, but I think it's definitely possible, because there are certain people with certain talents that aren't good in other areas, and you can see these things being attached by the chakra centers. And you can believe that energy comes from top to bottom, bottom to top, and has to go through one to the next to make these centers move. But if that was the case, and these centers control physical functions of our body, well then, logically, if they couldn't move independent of each other, then, the problems that we have later on in life because of these blockages would happen a lot sooner, and things would go wrong a lot faster. So either we start with our entire body spinning, and then they slowly start shutting down as we start blocking things. But anyways, I think that's going to be enough for that, because I thought I had more to say about that, but to me it's kind of a moot point, because I think you should be doing both. You should be attempting to connect both sides of your mind at the same time as you're opening up your chakras. And I think these things also happen of their own accord. So as you're meditating and doing different practices and practicing ritual, I think this slowly starts opening up your chakras. I think as you go through initiation and you hit the grades, well, certain grades are associated with certain chakras. So like your Earth Star chakra, you might connect that one with the root one, but then Venus is all the way up there near the heart. So, Earth, and then there's Earth again, and you know what I mean? So, maybe I'll come back to this in a future video. I thought I had more to say about it now, but there's a lot more I need to say about the other thing. Plus the videos I want to put on, I'm going to run out of time. So I'll circle back to this in a later date. So if you're upset, well, my bad. But, come up with your own theory and take what I said and elaborate on it and tell me where I fucked up and tell me where I can improve, and, maybe make your first video or something. All right. So before I go into me today watching Monsters Inc. and Monsters University with my daughter, and at the same time I was trying to write my next episode, and I was going to be playing, I was already going to play the Grant Morrison clips and KOETING clips, and I was kind of trying to write about just bullet ties, everything I wanted to write down. And I'm not gonna say that this was like me channeling information, but a lot of the information just kind of came to me, and it's quite the coincidence whenever you're watching a show like Monsters Inc. and this information comes to you. So I'm gonna be completely honest. Archons are something I heard about, something I know about from the Gnostic tradition, being the entities that kind of feed off of us, and I think some things have got twisted over time. Now, I studied a little bit about Rudolf Steiner. The word philosophia comes from the word sophia, sophia being the divine, one of the names for the divine feminine, and there's also Diana and a bunch of other things like that. So Gnostic Christians, people that practice this Gnostic religion, or I was just trying to get a fast grasp on it. So this isn't like a well done research yet, to the point where I've looked at many different places. I've heard a couple stories and I found some similarities that I will repeat, I guess. But so before I get into what I wrote down and about archons and entities and demons and this and that and the other things, I want you to understand that I didn't have this information I'm about to tell you right now, and I don't really know if this is true or not, because this isn't a line of study. It kind of predates maybe my magical witchcraft shit, if it's true. And once again, even the stuff I study and believe to be possibly how creation started is probably not even necessarily even fucking true, to be honest. So how the fuck do you ever really know is one hell of a question. So anyways, all that being said, where the fuck do I park? Sorry, I'm waiting for my son to be done his shit. He's playing clarinet on Thursday nights. Anyways, let's see if I got some heat. But anyways, okay, so Gnostic Christians, the Gnostic religion. So anyways, the number I think was 36, 37, something to that effect. These are the Archons, I want to say, or yeah, I believe that's how this story went in particular. I think Terrence McKenna has a fast version of it if you want to look it up. That's one of the ones I listened to, and it kind of had things in common with a lot of other ones. Anyways, these beings they weren't the creator beings, but they were beings that were on the earth. A lot of Christianity nowadays will think of the Archons as the fallen, they'll use the word watchers as in the fallen angels, when to me, if the watchers are part of the fallen angels, then they've been demonized. I don't really know who and what the watchers may be, but I don't believe that they're evil entities that came down with a being called Lucifer or Satan that fell from heaven. That was an angel that God kicked out. I don't believe that. I don't think that's a true story. Once again, I don't even know if any of this is a true story. This could just be a way of perceiving the world before the Christianity stories, the Moses stories, and all this. But there's something very interesting about it. So anyways, these Archon beings, out of all of them, either if there was 37 or 36, the last one, her name is Sophia. She's the only female Archon, only female being out of all of these beings. And the creator, God, source, the one that created them and everything else, she kind of sees how he's creating, and she's kind of infatuated and loves the thought of it, of how he's doing this, where They're Archons. Like I said, I haven't done too much research on this, and then I plan on doing that tonight, tomorrow, in the next few days as I keep banging out this episode. But I wanted to just put this out here just before I fucking get into my view of it. And you know, it might seem interesting to you, it may not. It might have nothing to do with each other, but it is what it is. So anyways, Sophia is the 36th or 37th Archon, the only girl. And she really likes what the creator, God, the one that created them, the spark, source, the all that we're in the mind of, is doing. Okay, so she's like the divine feminine figure, because after she sees what this God, this creator God, is able to do, she doesn't really know the rules of creation, which is kind of a weird way to put it, but that's how the stories worded this. And she is able to create within herself. So, you know, similar to how we don't really know how the creation goes. When we follow our physical laws and we make babies, we can make babies, but we don't necessarily create like God does. Now we can create entities like egregores, and you know, we can create circumstances, we can manipulate our reality, we can curse people, we can curse ourselves. It's kind of the same thing. We don't really understand how we create all that much, all that well. But, so she does create something, and what she creates is what is essentially known to be as the God of the Old Testament. Now, I thought that was fascinating. And after she sees what the God of the Old Testament is able to do and is doing, she's kind of angry with herself.
This is verifiable. People have been telling us about this for thousands of years. You know, the Tibetans have been telling us about this. The Mesopotamians have been telling us about this. And why has it been made occult? Because Coca-Cola have got the secret. These people know what we're talking about here, because what you do is you create a sigil. Coca-Cola is a sigil. The McDonald's M is a sigil. These people are basically turning the world into themselves using sigils. And if we don't reverse that process and turn the world into us using sigils, we're going to be living in fucking McDonald's. Right, but McDonald's have no more power than us, apart from the fact, like, as Doug said earlier, they got some money. Fuck it, who cares? You know what, the top levels of this stuff, no one's using money anyway. Do you think Rupert Murdoch or the Queen or Bill Clinton or any of these fuckers use money? Of course they don't. They've realised that the money is the only useful to sell to the middle classes and the people in the middle who make things happen and make things run. So we've been sold a fiction. There's no such thing as money. Ignore it. At the higher levels, there is... No. Yeah, hey! There is no money. These fuckers don't use money. If Rupert Murdoch wants a Rolls Royce, they give him one because he's Rupert Murdoch. And if they see him in a Rolls Royce, it means you get some status from it. So you've got to understand, these people in the higher levels are operating in a hierarchy of exchange and barter. On the lower levels, like in Glasgow where I live, which is the poorest city in Europe, people are living on a hierarchy of exchange that's quite different. They steal shit and they sell it back, and they have their own little money, and they have this complete black market economy. There's only us in the middle who think money's worth any fucking thing, and we chase it until we drop. So forget it. Where was I? And the other thing is also, I hate talking at people, so if anybody wants to join in, just please, you know, put your hand up, because I fucking hate just talking at people. So having figured these weird things out, having thought about this and having been through this experience, which is exactly the experience I was promised by Wilson, McKenna, Philip K. Dick, everyone, they promised us this thing, and it was. You can get the experiences. Do what they told you to do, and it will happen. I promise you, will meet aliens, they will talk to you. The Golden Dawn called this the conversation of the Holy Guardian, knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angels, sorry. So it's been around for a while. It's accessible to everyone. Magic is accessible to everyone. The means of altering reality is accessible to everyone. And when everyone starts doing it, we're going to get to see desire manifest on a gigantic scale. Everyone's desire. What happens when everyone's desire becomes manifest? Does the universe have to split up into a billion to accommodate it? Do we all have to suddenly understand that we're all in the same place and we can all share each other's desires? I don't know. I'm just here to talk about this stuff. So beyond that, beyond the alien abduction experience, I was working on the comic and I began to think of it seriously. I'd set up the comic to try and explore some of the problems we were dealing with, which are, as Doug pointed out earlier, problems of duality, us and them, good versus evil, this versus that. And as I worked my way through the comic, I began to realise some interesting things. I'll share them with you. These might not be true. They're useful little thoughts. You might be able to spin them, do something with them. But really, I'm just up here as someone who has read the same shit you've all read, put it into practice and found that it works. So here's my version of what happens. Doing the comic, I set up these characters. The whole thing was set up as an adventure story where there's some bad guys who live in another dimension who want to enslave us all, and there's some good guys who live in another dimension who want us all to have a good time. In the middle, there is us. And we are trying to obviously have a good time. Everybody wants to have a good time. You know, Hitler wanted to have a good time. And we all want to have a good time. So we've got to understand that as a starter. The more I set up these dualities, the more I set these people against the opposition, the more it began to seem like a complete crock. And we'd been sold this nonsense of opposition. And I began to find, the closer I got to the end of the series, that the whole opposition element of it was the least meaningful, least important part of it, and that we've actually been deluding ourselves in a lot of ways. Beyond that, I found that we've been deluding ourselves in the worst way of all by believing in the individual. Right? Stay with me on this. Kafka, Orwell, Patrick McGowan in The Prisoner, everyone told us the individual was the most important thing we could be. Everyone is fucking quirky these days. Every shit in the window of MTV is quirky. Everyone's cool. Everyone's smart. It's not true. What if the individual was the fake? What if the individual's the crock and we've actually been sold that by them, by the man, the establishment, whatever you want? Because what occurred to me is that when you talk about the individual and you deal with the individual, you find that the end of the individual is neurosis. To be individual means that there is self and not self. Okay? So where I stop, the boundaries of me, right, this physical body here, the boundaries of me that stretch out, things I believe in, things that I'm sure we'd all be friends if we talked, but would we be friends with Newt Gingrich? No. But that's the point. I stop when Newt Gingrich starts. Why is that? Why do I stop there? Why does he define my self-sense and I can't absorb him? Why do these fuckers, why does the Skull and Bones Society of the CIA, why do the 33rd degree Masons, why are they different from us? They're not. They want to explain things. They want an answer. They found an answer that seems to suit them, which seems kind of uncool and cruel to me because it involves exploiting other people, but they're looking for an answer. We're all looking for the same thing. Why are we here? Why are we here? What are you doing here today? What do you expect? What do you expect to take home with you? Can anyone answer? There's one person tell me what you expect to take home from me from this. Come on, put your hand up. Yeah? Exactly. Right, because that is all we have. And this is all I can offer you is experience of having done this shit, tested it, put it in the crucible to see what happens, and it works. So I began to think more and more about the individual, and I looked into what that actually meant. And what it was a structure that was pretty much created, the ego structure was created out of what Julian Jaynes calls the bicameral mind, becoming one mind. And apparently, according to him, he says that back in the old days of the Greeks and the earliest writing in the world, people didn't have self-consciousness in the same way that we have. They didn't have egos. They didn't understand themselves as I in the same way we did, because the corpus callosum that connects the two hemispheres of the brain wasn't connected. So if you heard a voice, that voice was God. And Homer and all those guys have got plenty of examples of people hearing the voice of God and acting on it. Alexander constantly acted on the voice of God. Julian Jaynes suggests that it wasn't the voice of God, it was the voice of the left hemisphere of the brain communicating with the right hemisphere of the brain, interpreted as a God. So okay, now we've got the two things joined together, we've got this beautiful bridge in the middle that links the two. But we still have the ego structure, which was then created when those things linked, because suddenly we linked, oh fuck, I am that I am. This is my God is this, I am separate, I am one. We made this idea that was somehow separated from nature. No, bullshit. Again, I read New Scientist last month, right? New Scientist last month, they're talking about nature, we must control nature, we must do this. How do we deal with our relationship to nature? We are fucking nature. There's nothing on this planet that is not nature. Power stations are nature. You know, like atom bombs are nature, because nature made us to make those things. Either you trust nature or you don't trust nature, and I trust nature. Okay. So we have to assume, what is nature getting at here? If we ignore this crap that we're somehow isolated from nature, that we somehow have to tame nature, of course, nature knows exactly what it's doing. The planet is not in danger, we are. The planet will survive. The planet's been through like ammonia atmospheres and impossible to live on and everything dead, and it gets its way back out of it. We're in danger. Or so we think, because our hubris tells us that we are in danger. Our hubris tells us that we're about to destroy the world, we're going to wreck the planet, we'll fuck the atmosphere. No, we'll fuck our atmosphere. You know, some trilobites will come up and they'll be able to live in anything we create. So that is not the problem. The problem is, we're standing here at the 21st century stuck with individuality because we believed in it so much. It seemed so important that we should all be distinct. What happens if we stop being distinct? And what happens if we think about individuality as something that was actually just scaffolding for where we are now? So if you create a skyscraper, you put up your scaffolding, you build the building, and what's happened here is that we've overlooked the building and focused on the scaffolding. You know, why haven't we taken the scaffolding down? Let's do it today. Take the scaffolding down. Because the individual is a way to get us to this point. And what I really think, and basically why I'm here, is to try and punt this notion. After doing this comic book for 6 years, after thinking about this stuff for 6 years, after proving that it works for 6 years, I'm left with this notion. We've been fooled, and we've fooled ourselves, and we continue to fool ourselves. And like Doug said, there is no us and no them, there's just us. And somehow we're trying to make this thing work, and it does work. Say, for instance, most of us here probably are pretty counterculture types. We've had some, you know, we like our drugs, we like this and that, we like breaking a few rules. But we don't like the police in general. You know, who here loves the police? Hands up. Nice one. Because I'm going to teach you to love the police. Why do we hate the police? If we want to change things, why don't everyone in here, let's go down to the local precinct and join up. Are we going to do it? Who's going to do it with me? Because I'm not going to do it. Right, and why? Why are we not doing that? Right, so we hate them. So we're hating these guys who've taken on this thing. We've chosen the biggest lunkheads in society to protect ourselves from the fuckers in Rikers Island. Because we are scared of them. You know, we are scared of them. We are middle class, libertarian liberals who are shit scared of being raped in prison. So we create the police. And we get the lunkheads who will obey what we tell them to do. They'll actually obey us. Those fuckers will do what we tell them. And we say to them, protect us from those real fuckers. Those bikers come and fuck us up and kill us and steal all our stuff. We put the police there. We put them there. And we don't want to go there because we're smart people. We're cool people. We don't want to go and hit anyone. We don't want to go and enforce the law because we don't really believe in it. But we know some poor bastard has to enforce it. Why do we hate those guys? Because we put them there. What is that hate? Why do we hate ourselves for creating this society? Why are so many people in America obsessed with Marilyn Manson, corpses, dead people, misery, John Wayne Gacy? John Wayne Gacy's a fucking prick. You know, he killed a few people and he draws some shitty paintings. What's that? Why is that? And why should we be engaged with that? And yet that has become, what, apocalypse culture. Where do we go from here that isn't that? Where do we go that isn't playing with our own shite? The answer. Back to the individual. If the individual doesn't work, if Patrick McGoon was wrong and number 6 was wrong to stand on that beach screaming, I am not a number, I am a free man, what do we have left? Because ultimately the guy who's not a number and not a free man experiences neurosis the further he goes down that path. I'm sure there's a bunch of people in here like me who eventually, you've worked your way through the stuff, you've read the books, you've done the shit, you've taken the drugs, you've been there, you've seen it, you've experienced enlightenment in little bits. You know it's out there, you know this stuff is true. The consensus doesn't explain our lives. But what does? Imagine getting rid of the individual. Imagine getting rid of that scaffolding. What do we have left? And here's what I'm about to offer. The more I looked into it, the more I began to see that we have these mutants living among us right now. The people from the 21st century, from the end of the 21st century are here. But there is no context for them. In the same way that if you lived in Tunguska 200 years ago and you were an epileptic, you would be a shaman. There was a context for you. In this society, you're an epileptic. It's quite simple. It's a disease. Nothing you say is of any worth because it's pathology. If, on the other hand, you look at these people who are out there, who are the mutants, and what do they call it? Multiple personality disorder. This is what lies beyond the personality. This is what lies beyond the I, the bullshit. Because if you take I to the limit, and like I say, I'm sure a lot of us here have done this, it becomes, all that happens is self questions self. Endlessly, repetitively, am I doing this right? Is this the right way? Should I think about these people like this? Should I approach them this way? Should I involve them this way? Self questions self endlessly. It reaches a peak, it goes nowhere. On the national scale, that same thing, self questions self, self encounters not self, equals borders, war, destruction. That's where it goes. That thing ends in disaster. It ends in neurosis on the personal level, and it ends in war on the national level. So I began to think, what could we replace that with? And I was looking at these poor MPD fuckers, and I realised they just don't have a context. What would happen if we decided to abandon the personality and replace it with a multiple personality complex? Because as we all know, everyone in here, I'm sure, I feel as if I can say this for certain, knowing human beings as they are, sometimes you do things that you don't want to do. Sometimes you do things that are contradictory to what you think. Sometimes you fuck yourself up. Why? Because there's not one person in here, there's hundreds. And if you start giving them names, and if you start shuffling them about, and you start playing with them, you become a bigger human being. Because you've no longer allowed yourself to stop at your boundaries. Imagine the personality as, well, let's choose Windows, even though this is a contentious one. Imagine the personality as Windows. Instead of the personality, there's so many people, I'm sure you've met them. You talk to them and say, no, this is the way I am. I've worked on this. This is me, and I won't change. And you just have to work with that. You know, this is me. This is important. This is what I've come to, and this is what I've made of myself. Bullshit. They're trapped. They don't go anywhere. They're stuck there. What if those same people were then given Personality 2000? Which is an upgrade and an add-on. And here's a bit to your personality that likes hip-hop. Here's a bit to your personality that likes ballet. And because we've all got them. And because we've got the fucker, we've got the serial killer inside, we've got the wonderful new age bastard, we've got whatever we like, we've got James Bond in there, you know, we've got Pussy Galore in there. They're all there. So what I'm suggesting is that we start working with it. Abandon the personality, abandon the individual, abandon the I because it's a lie and it has held us down. It's been like a weight around our necks. It was useful for the last 2,000 years of history because it created this out of the chaos that was. And this is more coherent, more useful, more meaningful. It has its problems, everything does, every system has, but we're getting better. And I think what we should do is walk away from the crap of the 21st century and start thinking about what we've been experiencing. My feeling about the 21st century is, and about World War II and about Auschwitz and all that stuff, is that we had to go through it. We had to do it. That was humanity's dark night of the soul, and it will never, ever happen again. But it had to happen. Every single nightmare image, every image of hell that we have in our minds happened. Everything you can think of happened. People were flayed, brutalised, gassed, tortured, cut into pieces, turned into pigs. Everything you can imagine happened. The world was a wasteland. There were cities completely annihilated. We went through it. Why did we do that? Stanislav Grof has a conception of the perinatal matrices, which was one of the big influences on the film The Matrix, so you might recognise some of this. He says that things that happen to us around birth are really profound, and they have all kinds of weird effects. They affect society, they affect the self, they affect everything, they have reverberations. And he claims that there are several states that he calls basic perinatal matrices. The first state is oceanic bliss, which we're all familiar with, I'm sure. Oceanic fucking bliss, mate. And that is the state of the baby in the womb, untouched. Everything is provided for, everything is there, everything you need will turn up out of the blue. Basic perinatal matrix 2 is a different thing. It's when the womb starts to turn a little toxic and begins to suggest that we're about to be expelled. And, we don't remember this stuff. What happened? And what was the feeling of that fetus in there who suddenly thinks my entire universe has been overturned, about to be shit out? Doesn't even know where he's going. What the fuck's this? I was happy there, it was cool. I was getting everything I wanted. And so on through to BPM 4, which is this kind of a release from tension, which is the birth process. So I'm beginning to think that, as a society, and returning to the idea of ontogeny as history, or phylogeny as history, whatever the fuck the word is, what we're looking at now is humanity's process through Grofian matrices. And World War II is actually a Stanislav Grof basic perinatal matrix 3 experience. Every image he talks about, death camps, control, the idea of babies trapped in tubes, you'll recognise all this from the Matrix, as I say. Oil, mechanism, machines that hate us, destructive technology, it all happened. What if this little baby that is the universe, this little larvae that's approaching culmination, has had to go through these stages? Because everything does. If you want to get rid of war, how do you get rid of war? Inoculate yourself against war by having the worst fucking war you've ever had in your life. And everything after that's just an aftershock. We've done nothing worse than what we did in those few years. Humanity has never come close to doing anything like it. We've tried, a few lunatics have tried. Nothing on that scale. So what if we choose to imagine that humanity has passed through that stage? We've reached the 21st century and we're now reaching basic perinatal matrix 4, which is victory after war, which is the struggle is over, which is we're all here. What do we do next? There was no apocalypse. There was no Christ. There was no rapture. There is nothing. All this stuff is shit. There is only us, and we've still got another 1,000 years, and maybe another 1,000 beyond that, and maybe another 20,000 beyond that. What are we going to do? Who are we? Are we going to stick to these personalities, these bounded, territorial things? Are we going to expand ourselves, make ourselves bigger, so that if you happen to like world music and I don't, I can tap into your love of world music and experience it, and it means something. So what I'm suggesting here is that we all take up magic, because basically it works. We can change the world. It's quite simple. The technology's there. The Buddhists have been telling us it. As I say, people have been telling us this for so long, and in the last 200 years it's been driven underground and we've forgotten, and people like us are here today to try and recover something of that. And the way to recover it is to do it. Do the techniques. Go and buy an Aleister Crowley book. Buy one with Phil Heine or Peter Carroll that's more up to date, and you don't have to bother with that 18th century fucking language of that guy. But do the shit, and you will find it works. And we stand here now, This is the counterculture. We are the counterculture. This is like this shit. I went to something like this in 1987. There was Robert Anton Wilson, the whole deal. And I remember sitting in the audience and thinking, fuck, rave is dead. Because it was that kind of thing. So that version of it's dead. The hippie version of it is dead. We stand here and we're looking ahead. What we're going to do. Abandon the personality is what I suggest. Get rid of the sense of self. Get rid of the sense of I and make yourself something bigger. Imagine that every time you want to learn something new is a new computer program. You can buy the operating system, the update. You can learn to fly a plane in 7 days according to neuro-linguistic programming. So why not? Let's do it. Do we want to change things, or are we just sitting here talking? No answer. Are we talking at all? Do we want to change things? Yeah, right, that's why we're fucking here, man. That is why we're here. So what are we going to do? If you want to change things, the first thing you have to change is yourself. Because if you don't change yourself, you will take on the world as if it's yourself and fuck up. You will really fuck up. Because if you don't understand your own dark side, if you don't understand your own weird, shitty side, if you don't understand the fact there's someone in there who will kill your mother, if need be, if you can't take that on, if you can't take that on board and realise that Charles Manson and me and you are not much different, that John Wayne Gacy and me and you are not much different except that he did it. You know, there's those days where I'm going to kill that motherfucker, but we don't do it. But it's in us, and it's there, and so much of this is denial, that we have no dark side. You know, the hippies and those lovely people in the rave era who were on ecstasy, they try to pretend we have no dark side, and what happened was they get fucked up by their own dark side, as will always happen. So let's kiss our dark side, let's fuck our dark side, let's get him down there where he belongs. And he can tell us stuff, you know, that thing's useful. But above all, let us become plex creatures, complex, superplex, able to take on new personality traits, able to take on new ideas, able to adapt, able to extend our boundaries into what was previously the enemy territory, until the point where we become what we once called our enemy and they are us, and there is no distinction. Mad cow disease, or BSE or CJD, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. It's very interesting. It's because it's hitting the headlines. People are interested in these new 21st century fucked up diseases that are going to wipe us all out, apparently. This is a disease. I've been studying this because it seems like a really good metaphor to use. CJD is a disease that attacks the brain and central nervous system and utterly demolishes them. Completely, you're fucked. You will slide down a ramp like a stupid cow. And you will, you'll fall on the concrete, you won't be able to walk, your brain will turn to sponge, it will be eaten to bits. You know that CJD does that without the immune system noticing? The immune system can't detect CJD. By the time you're slipping down the ramp like the cow, it's all over. The immune system suddenly says, oh fuck, we're in trouble. Too late, mate. So what happens if we act like CJD and BSE? What if we colonise the culture? What if we give it something it can't swallow? And this is a little bit like what Doug was saying earlier. We go in there, they want us, they're desperate for us because they think we know this shit. We know something they don't know. We're attached, we're connected in some way that they don't, whoever, these poor bastards. They're looking at us like, I've got a leather jacket, I know something. But that's what they think. And what I think has actually happened here, the culture's getting weirder and weirder. Back home in Britain, Tony Blair is putting up cameras on every street corner, and he's talking about putting cameras in people's homes. He's got rid of trial by jury. I mean, this is like fascist Britain 1999, But the more he does this, the weirder things get. The more cameras you put up, the more people will start to act like movie stars. The more people start to act like movie stars, the weirder things get. And then the more cameras they put up to try and deal with it, and the weirder it gets. So let them bring the camera and I'll fucking act the shit out of these bastards. Let's have the cameras. There's cameras everywhere and we'll show them what we can do. And they'll be watching it and going, man, that guy's getting fucked. I wish I was. And they want in. They want in this. So let's, like Doug said, invite them in. Let's take them in. Let's be like the diseased prion that destroys its host in CJD. Let's go in there and give them something they cannot digest, something they cannot process, something so toxic, so dangerous, so powerful that it will breed and destroy them utterly. Not destroy them, turn them into us, because that's what we want. We want everybody to be cool. We don't want to go out there and think, that guy's going to kill me, that guy hates me, that guy's got some fucking weird agenda. Don't we just want to talk and let it all go and just say, hey, I'm interested in you, what have you got to tell me? That's what it's all about, isn't it? We communicate, we join up, we make networks, we make things happen. And there are some people in the world who don't want to do that, so let us infect them. Infect them to the point where they become us, where there's nothing left in this world but us. And then some kid will come up and fuck that as well. And that'll be exactly what we need at the time. And that's me finished, so thank you very much.
Communicated philosophy is never as interesting as philosophy carefully thought out. But divine inspiration isn't that kind of communication. Divine inspiration is, for example, to feel, for reasons that you can't really understand, that you love people. Divine inspiration is a wisdom which it's very difficult to put into words, like mystical experience. That's divine inspiration. And a person who writes out of that experience could be said to be divinely inspired. Or it might come through dreams, through archetypal messages from the collective unconscious, through which the Holy Spirit could be said to work. But since inspiration always comes through a human vehicle, it is liable to be distorted by that vehicle. In other words, I'm talking to you through a sound system, and it's the only one now available. Now, if there's something wrong with this sound system, whatever truths I might utter to you will be distorted. My voice will be distorted. And you might mistake the meaning of what I said. Now, so therefore, everybody who receives divine inspiration, and I'm using that in a very loose way, you could mean anything you like by divine, that's your option, but anybody who receives it will express it within the limits of what language he knows. And by language here, I don't only mean English, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, or Sanskrit. I mean language in the sense of what sort of terms are available to you. What kind of religion were you brought up with? Now you see, if you were brought up in the Bible Belt, you came out of Arkansas somewhere, and that's all the religion you knew, and you had a mystical experience of the type where you suddenly discover that you are one with God, then you're liable to get up and say, I'm Jesus Christ. And lots of people do. Well, the culture that we live in just can't allow that. There was only one Jesus Christ. And sort of you don't look like you were Jesus Christ coming back again, because it's said in the scriptures that when he comes back, there will be no doubt about it. He'll appear in the heavens with legions of angels, and you're not doing that. You're just old Joe Dokes that we knew years ago, and now you say you're Jesus Christ. Well, he says that when Jesus Christ said he was God, nobody believed him, and you don't believe again. You know, you can't answer that argument. But you see, he says it that way because he is trying to express what happened to him in terms of a religious language which is circumscribed by the Holy Bible. He's never read the Upanishads. He's never read the Diamond Sutra. He's never read the Tibetan Book of the Dead or the I Ching or the Lao Tzu. And therefore, there is no other way in which he can say this. But if he had read the Upanishads, he would have had no difficulty, and nor would the culture, the society in which he was talking, have any difficulty. Because it says in the Upanishads, we are all incarnations of God. Only they don't mean by the word God, in fact they don't use that word, they use Brahman. They don't mean the same thing that a Hebrew meant by God. Because the Brahman is not personal. Brahman is, we would say, suprapersonal. Not impersonal, because that is a negation. But I would say suprapersonal. Brahman is not he or she. Has no sex. Brahman is not the creator of the world as something underneath and subject to Brahman, but the actor of the world, the player of all the parts, so that everyone is a mask, which is the meaning of the word person, in which the Brahman plays a role. And like an absorbed actor, the divine spirit gets so absorbed in playing the role as to become it. And to be bewitched, and this is all part of the game, into believing I am that role. When you were babies, you knew who you were. Psychoanalysts refer to that as the oceanic feeling. They don't really like it, but they admit that it exists, where the baby cannot distinguish between the world and the way it acts upon the world. It's all one process, which is, of course, the way things are. But we learn very quickly because we're taught very quickly what is you and what is not you. What is voluntary, what is involuntary, because you can be punished for the voluntary but not for the involuntary. And so we unlearn what we knew in the beginning. And in the course of life, if we're fortunate, we discover again what we really are, that each one of us is what would be called in Arabic or Hebrew a son of God. And the word son of means of the nature of, as when you call someone a son of a bitch. Or in Arabic you say Ebedi Kelb, which means son of a dog, Ebeni El Homar, son of a donkey. So, a son of Belial means an evil person. Son of God means a divine person. Human being who has realized union with God. Now my assumption, my opinion, is that Jesus of Nazareth was a human being, like Buddha, like Sri Ramakrishna, like Ramana Maharshi, etc., who early in life had a colossal experience of what we call cosmic consciousness. Now, you don't have to be any particular kind of religion to get this experience. It can hit anyone, anytime, like falling in love. There are obviously a number of you in this building who've had it, in greater or lesser degree. But it's found all over the world. And when it hits you, you know it. Sometimes it comes after long practice of meditations and spiritual discipline. Sometimes it comes for no reason that anybody can determine. We say it's the grace of God. That there comes this overwhelming conviction that you have mistaken your identity. That what you thought, what I thought was just old Alan Watts, who I know very well is just a big act and a show. But what I thought was in the, me, was only completely superficial. That I am an expression of an eternal something or other. X. A name that can't be named, as the name of God was taboo among the Hebrews. I am. And that I suddenly understand why, exactly why everything is the way it is. It's perfectly clear. Furthermore, I feel no longer any boundary between what I do and what happens to me. I feel that everything that's going on is my doing, just as my breathing is. Is your breathing voluntary or involuntary? Do you do it or does it happen to you? So you can feel it both ways. but you feel everything like breathing. And it isn't as if you had become a puppet. There is no longer any separate you. There is just this great happening going on. And if you have the name in your background, you will say, this happening is God, or the will of God, or the doing of God. Or if you don't have that word in your background, you will say with the Chinese, it is the flowing of the Tao. Or if you're a Hindu, you will say it is the Maya of Brahman. The Maya means the magical power, the creative illusion, the play. So you can very well understand how people to whom this happens feel genuinely inspired. Because very often there goes along with it an extremely warm feeling. Because you see the divine in everybody else's eyes. When Kabir, a great Hindu-Muslim mystic, was a very old man, he used to look around at people and say, to whom shall I preach? Because he saw the beloved in all eyes. And could see, sometimes I look into people's eyes, and I can look right down, and I can see that beloved in the depths of those pools. And yet the expression on the face is saying, what, me? It's the funniest thing. But there is everybody, in his own peculiar way, playing out an essential part in this colossal cosmic drama. And it's so strange that one can even feel it in people you thoroughly dislike. So, let's suppose then that Jesus had such an experience. But, you see, Jesus has a limitation. That he doesn't know of any religion other than those of the immediate Near East. He might know something about Egyptian religion, a little bit maybe about Greek religion, but mostly about Hebrew. There is no evidence whatsoever that he knew anything about India or China. And people who think, Jesus was God, assume that he must have known because he would have been omniscient. No. St. Paul makes it perfectly clear in the epistle to the Philippians that Jesus renounced his divine powers so as to be man. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought not equality with God a thing to be hung on to, but humbled himself and made himself of no reputation, and was found in fashion as a man, and became obedient to death. Theologians call that kenosis, which means self-emptying. So, obviously, an omnipotent and omniscient man would not really be a man. So even if you take the very orthodox Catholic doctrine of the nature of Christ, that he was both true God and true man, you must say that for true God to be united with true man, true God has to make a voluntary renunciation, for the time being, of omniscience and omnipotence, and omnipresence for that matter. Now therefore, if Jesus were to come right out and say, I am the Son of God, that's like saying I'm the boss's son. Or I am the boss. And everybody immediately says that is blasphemy. That is subversion. That is trying to introduce democracy into the kingdom of heaven. That is, you are a usurper of the throne. No man has seen God. Now, Jesus, in his exoteric teaching, as recorded in the Synoptic Gospels, was pretty cagey about this. He didn't come right out there and say, I and the Father are one. Instead, he identified himself with the Messiah described in the second part of the prophet Isaiah. The suffering servant who was despised and rejected of men. And this man is the non-political Messiah, in other words. It was convenient to make that identification, even though it would get him into trouble. But to his elect disciples, as recorded in St. John, he came right out and said, before Abraham was, I am. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the living bread that comes down from heaven. I and the Father are one, and he who has seen me has seen the Father. And there can be no mistaking that language. So the Jews found out, and they put him to death, or had him put to death, for blasphemy. This is no cause for any special antagonism to the Jews. We would do exactly the same thing. It's always done. It happened to one of the great Sufi mystics in Persia, who had the same experience. Now what happened? The apostles didn't quite get the point. They were awed by the miracles of Jesus. They worshipped him as people do worship gurus. And it's, you know, to what lengths that can go if you've been around guru land. And so the Christians said, okay, Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but let it stop right there. Nobody else. So what happened was that Jesus was pedestalized. He was put in a position that was safely upstairs, so that his troublesome experience of cosmic consciousness would not come and cause other people to be a nuisance. And those who have had this experience and expressed it during those times when the church had political power were almost invariably persecuted. Gordiano Bruno was burnt at the stake. John Scotus Origena was excommunicated. Meister Eckhart's theses were condemned, and so on and so on. A few mystics got away with it because they used cautious language. But you see what happens. If you pedestalize Jesus, you strangle the gospel. Meister Eckhart's theses were condemned, and so on and so on. A few mystics got away with it because they used cautious language. But you see what happens. If you pedestalize Jesus, you strangle the gospel at birth. And it has been the tradition in both the Catholic Church and in Protestantism to pass off what I will call an emasculated gospel. Gospel means good news. And I cannot for the life of me think what is the good news about the gospel as ordinarily handed down. Because look here. Here is the revelation of God in Christ, in Jesus. And we are supposed to follow his life and example without having the unique advantage of being the boss's son. Now, the tradition, both Catholic and Protestant fundamentalist, represents Jesus to us as a freak, born of a virgin, knowing he is the Son of God, having the power of miracles, knowing that basically it's impossible to kill him, that he's going to rise again in the end. And we are asked to take up our cross and follow him when we don't know that about ourselves at all. So what happens is this. We are delivered, therefore, a gospel which is in fact an impossible religion. It's impossible to follow the way of Christ. All right. Many a Christian has admitted it. I am a miserable sinner. I fall far short of the example of Christ. But do you realize, the more you say that, the better you are. Because what happened was that Christianity institutionalized guilt as a virtue. You see, you can never come up to it. Never. And therefore, you will always be aware of your shortcomings. And so the more shortcomings you feel, the more, in other words, you are aware of the vast abyss between Christ and yourself. You will have your opportunity to speak in the question period, madam. So, you go to confession. And if you've got a nice, dear, understanding confessor, he won't get angry with you. He'll say, my child, you know you've sinned very grievously, but you must realize that the love of God and of our Lord is infinite, and that naturally you are forgiven. As a token of thanksgiving, say 3 Hail Marys. And you know you've committed a murder and robbed a bank and fornicated around and so on. And the priest is perfectly patient and quiet. Well, you feel awful. Think, I have done that. To the love of God, I have wounded Jesus, grieved the Holy Spirit, and so on. But you know in the back of your mind that you're going to do it all over again. You won't be able to help yourself. You'll try. But there's always a greater and greater sense of guilt. Now, the lady objected that I was putting up a straw man and knocking it down. This is the Christianity of most people. Now, there is a much more subtle Christianity of the theologians, the mystics, and the philosophers. But it's not what gets preached from the pulpit. Grant you. But the message of Billy Graham is approximately what I've given you. And of all, what I will call fundamentalist forms of Catholicism and Protestantism. What would the real gospel be? The real good news is not simply that Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but that he was a powerful Son of God who came to open everybody's eyes to the fact that you are too. And this is perfectly plain. If you will go to the 10th chapter of St. John, verse 30, there is the passage where Jesus says, I and the Father are one. And there are some people who are not intimate disciples around, and they're horrified. And they immediately pick up stones to stone him. He says, many good works I have shown you from the Father. And for which of these do you stone me? And they said, For a good work we stone you not, but for blasphemy, because you being a man make yourself God. And he replied, Isn't it written in your law, I have said you are gods? He's quoting the 82nd Psalm. Is it not written in your law, I have said you are gods? If God called then those to whom he gave his word gods, and you can't deny the scriptures, how can you say I blaspheme? Because I said I am a son of God. Well, there's the whole thing in a nutshell. Because if you read the King James Bible that descended with the angel, you will see in italics in front of this word Son of God, the Son of God, because I said I am the Son of God. And most people think that the italics are for emphasis. They're not. The italics indicate words interpolated by the translators. You will not find that in the Greek. The Greek says a Son of God. So it seems to me here perfectly plain that Jesus got it in the back of his mind that this isn't something peculiar to himself. So when he says, I am the way, no man comes to the Father but by me, this I am, this me, is the divine in us, which in Hebrew would be called the Ruach Adonai. There's a great deal made of this by the esoteric Jews, the Kabbalists and the Hasidim. The Ruach is the breath which God breathed into the nostrils of Adam. It is differing from the soul. The individual soul in Hebrew is called nephesh. And so we translate the Ruach into the Greek pneuma and the nephesh into psyche or psyche. The spirit. And you ask a theologian what's the difference between the soul and the spirit, and he won't be able to tell you. But it's very clear in St. Paul's writings. So the point is that the Ruach is the divine in the creature, by virtue of which we are sons of, or of the nature of God. Manifestations of the divine. This discovery is the gospel. That is the good news. But this has been perpetually repressed throughout the history of Western religion, because all Western religions have taken the form of celestial monarchies and therefore have discouraged democracy in the kingdom of heaven. Until, as a consequence of the teaching of the German and Flemish mystics in the 15th century, there began to be such movements as the Anabaptists, the Brothers of the Free Spirit, and the Levelers and the Quakers. A spiritual movement which came to this country and founded a republic. And not a monarchy. And how could you say that a republic is the best form of government if you think that the universe is a monarchy? Obviously, if God is top on a monarchy, monarchy is the best form of government. But you see, ever so many citizens of this republic think they ought to believe that the universe is a monarchy. And therefore they are always at odds with the republic. It is from principally white, racist Christians that we have the threat of fascism in this country. Because, you see, they have a religion which is militant, which is not the religion of Jesus, which was the realization of divine sonship, but the religion about Jesus, which pedestalizes him and which says only this man, of all the sons of woman, was divine, and you had better recognize it. And so it speaks of itself as the church militant. The onward Christian soldiers marching us to war. Utterly exclusive. Convinced in advance of examining the doctrines of any other religion that is the top religion. And so it becomes a freak religion. Just as it has made a freak of Jesus, an unnatural man. It claims uniqueness, not realizing that what it does teach would be far more credible if it were truly Catholic. That is to say, restated again the truths which have been known from time immemorial, which have appeared in all the great cultures of the world. But even very liberal Protestants still want to say, somehow, so as I suppose to keep the mission effort going, or to pay off the mortgage. Yes, these other religions are very good. God has no doubt revealed himself through Buddha and Lao Tzu. But now, obviously, it is a matter of temperament. You can be loyal to Jesus, just as you're loyal to your own country. But you are not serving your country if you think that it's necessarily the best of all possible countries. That is doing a disservice to your country. It is refusing to be critical where criticism is proper. So of religion. Every religion should be self-critical. Otherwise, it soon degenerates into a self-righteous hypocrisy. If then we can see this, that Jesus speaks not from the situation of a historical deus ex machina, a kind of weird, extraordinary event, but he is a voice which joins with other voices that have said in every place and time, wake up, man, wake up, and realize who you are. Now, I don't think, you see, until churches get with that they're going to have very much relevance. You see, popular Protestantism and popular Catholicism will tell you nothing about mystical religion. The message of the preacher, 52 Sundays a year, is, dear people, be good. We've heard it ad nauseam. Or believe in this. He may occasionally give a sermon on what happens after death or the nature of God. But basically, the sermon is be good. But how? As St. Paul said, to will is present with me. But how to do that which is good I find not, for the good that I would that I do not, and the evil that I would not that I do. How are we going to be changed? Obviously, there cannot be a vitality of religion without vital religious experience. And that's something much more than emoting over singing Onward Christian Soldiers. But you see, what happens in our ecclesiastical goings-on is that we run a talking shop. We pray. We tell God what to do or give advice as if he didn't know. We read the scriptures. And remember, talking of the Bible, Jesus said, you search the scriptures daily, for in them you think you have life. St. Paul made some rather funny references about the spirit which giveth life and the letter which kills. I think the Bible ought to be ceremoniously and reverently burned every Easter. We need it no more because the Spirit is with us. It's a dangerous book. And to worship it is, of course, a far more dangerous idolatry than bowing down to images of wood and stone. Because nobody in his senses can confuse a wooden image with God, but you can very easily confuse a set of ideas with God, because concepts are more rarefied and abstract. So with this endless talking in church, we can preach, but by and large preaching does nothing but excite a sense of anxiety and guilt. And you can't love out of that. No scolding, no rational demonstration of the right way to behave is going to inspire people with love. Something else must happen. Oh, he'll say, what are we going to do about it? Do about it. You have no faith? Be quiet. Even Quakers aren't quiet. They sit in meeting and think. At least some of them do. But supposing we are really quiet, we don't think. Be absolutely silent through and through. We say, well, you'll just fall into a blank. Oh, ever tried? I feel then, you see, that it's enormously important that churches stop being talking shops. They become centers of contemplation. What is contemplation? Contemplum. It's what you do in the temple. You don't come to the temple to chatter. But to be still and know that I am God. And this is why, if the Christian religion, if the gospel of Christ is to mean anything at all, instead of just being one of the forgotten religions, along with Osiris and Mithra, we must see Christ as the great mystic. In the proper sense of the word mystic, not someone who has all sorts of magical powers and understands spirits and so on. A mystic, strictly speaking, is one who realizes union with God, by whatever name. This seems to me the crux and message of the gospel, summed up in the prayer of Jesus, which St. John records, as he speaks over his disciples, praying that they may be one, even as you, Father, and I are one, that they may be all one. All realize this divine sonship, or oneness, basic identity with the eternal energy of the universe and the love that moves the sun and other stars.